our presenter today. We're very glad to have him, and then we'll get started. I appreciate everybody. Just a few housekeeping things. You shouldn't be able to unless I do it. I guess you can, but please make sure we stay muted and make sure we give John our full attention and don't interrupt. And if we do have questions, we have plenty of time for that. And I'll make sure I monitor the chat so we can make sure everybody's questions are answered. Again, we appreciate you all taking your lunch hour to be with us. We're grateful for that. And we also will send out resources from this meeting today. You'll also get our link to our YouTube page with our recorded meeting. And we also send out certificates of attendance. So you can request a certificate of attendance by sending me an individual email, and we'll take care of that for you. Other than that, I will go ahead and introduce John. So again, I appreciate you all. And today we're going to talk about Florida's Disability Savings Program, Able United, the Achieving a Better Life Experience, ABLE. The ABLE Act allows individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities to save money tax-free for a wide variety of future expenses, including transportation, housing, education, and while they get to maintain their benefits such as social SSI and Medicaid. Able United provides new opportunities for people with disabilities and can change the way they plan for short-term expenditures and establish long-term savings. John Finch serves as the director of Able United at the Florida Prepaid College Board in Tallahassee, Florida. And he also oversaw the launch and continued success of Florida's ABLE program. Previously, he served at the Arc of Florida in various capacities. So this is before my time. John, I've only been here for just about 3 years now. John used to work for the Arc of Florida as well. So we're very grateful to have John. John, you should be able to share and do anything you need to. And if you need my help, right here, I'm going to be monitoring the chat and monitoring questions. So anything else you need, you just let me know. You should be able to share.
Awesome. Yep, perfect. Well, thank you all so much for spending your lunch hour with me. It's good to be home. The ARC kind of has a special place in my heart. It's where I got my start, and it really kind of shaped my career, my path, my compassion on what I do for a living. And so, special warm place in my heart for the ARC of Florida and all that you guys do, and all the chapters and families involved, and just love your mission. And just so thankful that I have an opportunity to present. So appreciate Dustin. Give my thanks and love to those in the office. But with that, let's talk high level about ABLE accounts. And hopefully, if you've never heard about this will be something we'll cover to hopefully get you all on the same page. Will be a great resource and tool for you, your families, your organization, and we'll also cover up some updates because. We are celebrating this year our 10-year anniversary, and with that, there's been significant changes over the last handful of years that really have improved this program. And looking towards the future on the continued success and growth of this program. So we're going to learn about all things ABLE and how this could be a benefit for you. Well, let's start all the way back in the early 2000s when a group of family members sat around a dining room table and started to think of their loved ones' future, especially in the Down syndrome and autism community, and said, there really wasn't an incentive or a mechanism for us to allow us to start saving and investing for our child's future without negatively impacting their future eligibility for Medicaid waiver programs, SSI, or any other federally means tested program. And so they didn't think that was right. So they started advocating, hey, we should have a mechanism, a tool to allow us to start saving, just like somebody could save in a 529 college savings plan for their future child if they're going off to college. And so through their hard work and advocacy, what came to be known as the Achieving Better Life Experience Act, better known as ABLE, finally passed in 2014. So it took about 10 years for it to pass federally. And then each state had to enact its own legislation. And so Florida enacted its legislation in 2015. And proud to say that ARC was one of those at the table pushing the legislation here, both nationally, federally, but also here in our state capital. And so it was awesome to be part of that and seeing the success of that. But what is an ABLE account, right? So you're like, okay, you passed this legislation. What is it? So high level, if there's anything you want to get from today's webinar, it's really the point of what an ABLE account is. And so High level, an Able United account gives Floridians with a severe diagnosis or disability a way to save and invest, have tax-free earnings, and to do so without impacting their eligibility or losing their public benefit eligibility, which is huge because a lot of these public benefit programs, probably maybe your family members or the people you serve, really are restricted to having typically $2,000 to their name. And so that's not a lot of money, especially in today's economy. And so the great thing is money in this account doesn't impact those benefits. And we're going to unpack all what that means. But high level, end of the day, this is a unique savings and investment tool specifically geared towards individuals with a disability or diagnosis. And so, as I mentioned, every state, so that passed federally and said, hey, states, you can now create these accounts and these programs. How are you going to run it? And so, here in the state of Florida, they passed legislation and said, hey, Florida Prepaid, you have been around for quite a while, since the 80s, the 1980s, and you've had success in helping millions of families save for higher education expenses. Why don't we have you kind of run this program for the state? And so they did that. And so we're administratively housed under Florida Prepaid. We're what we call a direct support organization, Able United is, which basically means it's a nonprofit with no staff that has a board to report to. But ultimately, Florida Prepaid kind of manages this program and gives its guidance. And so statutorily, you can see our fund statute. You can go and check how this program is supposed to be set up and run here in the state of Florida. So Florida Prepaid runs it, but I can't do it all on my own. Although I'm the director of the program, I'm a kind of like a staff of one. We utilize vendors, and one of those biggest vendors being Vestwell. So Vestwell is our record-keeping custodian customer service platform that we utilize. So if you log into the account, that interface you're working with is through a company called Vestwell, large fintech company based out of New York City. They manage about 19, I think so, other ABLE programs. So pretty large, but we're one of their people they manage for our accounts as well. And so you might see Vestwell if you go to enroll, or if you call customer service, that's who you're dealing with. So let's talk about who's actually eligible to have one of these accounts, because it is kind of unique. As I mentioned, this is geared towards individuals with a severe disability or diagnosis. And so there's some rules around who can actually have one of these accounts. The first rule is kind of unique to Florida. As I mentioned, this is Florida's program. So Able United, there's, I think a slide later, you'll see there's about 46 other programs across the state, including Washington, D.C. And so as Florida's Able program, we want to make sure that this is the best value for Floridians. And so at this moment, we're only open to Florida residents at the time they apply. Now, if they move out of state, they could take the Able United account with them. But I do encourage individuals to check out that new state's Able program, as there may be some unique benefits what that state can offer, such as state tax credit deductions or credit relief for contributions to their state's Able program. Of course, we don't have income tax here in Florida, so we don't have that kind of benefit. But the next two requirements are true for all ABLE programs. This is the federal law and what it says to be eligible for an ABLE account. One is that the individual does have to have a severe diagnosis of disability with onset prior to age 46. Now that's new. If you've heard of this before, we used to say 26 was the age of onset, which encompassed predominantly everybody that you all serve under the ARC umbrella. But this new increase in age kind of has added we estimate about 400,000 to 500,000 more Floridians who are now eligible for the ABLE account. And so these could be later onset disabilities, whether that be various psychiatric disorders, maybe more multiple sclerosis, or later onset disabilities. And so that's kind of where our focus has been. So they do have to have that diagnosis, and it had to happen with an onset prior to their 46th birthday. Not only do they have to have a disability diagnosis or some kind of diagnosis, that diagnosis has to be severe. And severity is based on the Social Security standard for disability, but regardless of age. And so what that means is an individual receiving supplemental security income, Social Security disability insurance, either one of those, automatically meets the Social Security requirements, right? If they're not on those, they just have to attest and either have a physician's certificate or diagnosis paperwork showing that they meet that severity limit. And so on our website, we have a physician's form that somebody could take to their primary doctor and get signed off. But typically, speaking to this audience, most of you are going to qualify, right? Because whether it be Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, an intellectual disability, a lot of these disability types that the ARC serves are more earlier onset, and so they're going to automatically qualify. But those are kind of the rules for who is eligible. And as I mentioned, it is a broad set of disabilities and diagnosis that qualify. And so, historically, when this program first launched, we did a great work because it was advocated in the Down syndrome and autism realm. So a lot of developmental, intellectual, congenital anomalies individuals are in our program. And the IRS did kind of list some of the other types of diagnoses that would qualify, like psychiatric disorders, whether that be schizophrenia, bipolar, PTSD, but nervous disorders. We have a lot of individuals with blindness, deafness, or even some kind of muscular dystrophy would also qualify. And there's even an other category. And so this, when somebody goes through the enrollment process, which we'll talk about, they're going to select and categorize their primary disability or diagnosis. And it's more for us to help us as a program, but we do report that to the IRS as well. What's also unique about the ABLE account, not only who is eligible, but the ownership of the account, the asset, the money that's in the ABLE account actually belongs to the individual with the disability. So you're creating a resource for them that's sheltered for public benefits testing, but it is their money. Money gifted to that account is theirs, and so it needs to be used for their benefit. Now, they're the owner of it, but they may not have the capacity to manage the account. It could be a minor, could be somebody who chooses not to manage it and wants to appoint somebody else to manage the account, or maybe they lack capacity. And so in those situations, somebody else can manage the account. So if the beneficiary has capacity, they can appoint whoever they want. But if they don't, it has to kind of follow this hierarchy of individuals. So it could be legal guardian, power of attorney. It could be somebody family related, regardless of their age. So, it could be a parent of a 40-year-old. That still qualifies because you're still a parent. Parent, spouse, sibling, grandparent. It could be even Social Security rep payees. So I know there's been a handful of ARCs we work with across the state who are the rep payee for individuals in their care. And so as that caregiver Social Security rep payee role, they've been able to establish ABLE accounts on their behalf so to keep people below the resource limit. And so a variety of people can manage this account. And we call that person that manages the account the authorized legal representative, or ALR for short. And so that's just the terminology we use. But basically, they're going to have authorized signatory on the account. So they're in charge of logging in and managing it and putting money in and taking money out. That's all going to rely on them. Now, in some instances, you may have other people involved. And so this is a feature we rolled out last year. So this might be new to you. But under the settings, you can add authorized roles. And so these, the ALR can say, hey, maybe I want an additional family member to be looking at this account. Maybe I have a financial advisor who wants to kind of just look at the investment lineup, see how things are going, to make suggestions. And so you can actually add additional authorized users on the account, everywhere from an account manager who can take money in and out and manage the investments, or somebody that wants to just be a contributor, but wants to look at the account and then put money in, and then even somebody that wants to be a viewer. So I can see some of the ARCs, I can see them, hey, we're going to add more viewers so they can go on there, generate reports, look at people's funding, but not actually control anything. So just keep in mind the SSA rules still apply for rep payees putting Social Security funds in here. That's important to know. But that's a new feature we rolled out last year. And as Dustin mentioned, if you do have questions, go ahead and pop that in the chat. That's probably the best way. And we can always, we'll have time at the end as well to answer any questions you may have. So we kind of discussed the history of the ABLE account, how it's been set up, how it's managed and run here in Florida, who's eligible. Let's actually look at the account and kind of see what this all entails. And so, as I mentioned, we are run by the state of Florida. This is a state of Florida administered program, and so we're not tied to a bank. a credit union, or any other financial institution. So it's not like you can walk down to your local Wells Fargo or Bank of America and say, hey, yes, I want to open an ABLE account with Florida. And they're going to say, we have no idea what you're talking about. To cut down on costs and to make this the most efficient, you have to do enrollment online. Able United is our website. We actually launched a brand new website. So this is the screenshot of the home page where it's going to help people guide and give them a bunch of information. But in the top right, you'll see there where you can actually open the account. And so this is where you would go to manage the account, to fund the accounts, take money out of the account. It's all going to be done online. Now we do have paper forms. So some individuals are like, hey, I don't want to do anything online. We do have a paper application and some paper forms you could do. It just everything gets slower and takes longer, but we do make that available for people who request it. So you're ready to open an account. You go to our website, you hit open account, ableunited.com, and you're like, all right, what do I need to get started? Right. So if you imagine if you went down to the bank and you were like, hey, I want to open up a checking or savings account, what are they going to request? Right. Driver's license, picture ID, date of birth, social. Um, for us, so this is online, you're going to need an email address. That's going to be your login. So all that kind of typical information for whoever's managing the account, as well as for the beneficiary. So keep that in mind. You're going to need both sets of information, and you're going to input that in there. Now we use something called Plaid IDV. So depending on your name, your social, and your address, it might pull some of the information for you. So sometimes it may request you to take a picture photo of your ID card. Sometimes we'll be able to verify your identity based on public information. So just depending on how much information you have out there on the internet, basically. And so once you go through that process of verifying who the account's for, who's managing it, you're going to go through the eligibility requirements. So this includes selecting that disability category, verifying that the person's disability had an onset either prior to age 26 or between 26 and 46, and some other self-certifications. The great news is there's nothing to upload. All right, we might ask you to take a picture of your ID and a selfie to verify your identity. But when it comes to like paperwork on diagnosis and that kind of stuff, we don't want any of that. It's between you and the IRS if the IRS were to ever ask. So there's nothing that we collect from you outside of that. So just keep that in mind. Then you're going to put money in the account, right? So part of that process of enrollment is to actually get the account established. We do request to put a $25 deposit in. Now, just to let you know, we do have a campaign going on right now that lasts until beginning of April, where if individuals contribute and open up a new account for the first time, we'll put $50 in the account. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get that funding, but hey, it's incentivized because we really do believe this is a very valuable product, a very valuable thing the state is offering. And so with that, we want to put $50 in for you on your behalf. So keep that in mind if you decide to open an account. And then finally, that money goes in. Where's it going to go? You get to then choose. Is this going to be more like a savings product, an investment product? And we'll talk a little bit more about the investment selection. So that sounds like a lot, but on average, the enrollment process takes about 10 minutes. So as long as you have all the documentation or all of your ID and information available, it shouldn't take too long to establish the account. All right, so let's talk a little bit about two parts of the account, right? So the account set up, you want to be able to put money in, and then you want to take the money out. So what does it look like to put money into the account? So the good thing is anybody can contribute to an ABLE account. So if the beneficiary is working, or maybe they have leftover Social Security funds, they can put that in an ABLE account. They have family friends that want to contribute and help them. They can contribute directly to that ABLE account and it not be counted as income. So that's kind of unique. Maybe you have a church, an organization, a business, you win a scholarship, and they're like, well, we don't want to give you the money because if you do, it counts as unearned income, could impact some benefits. Well, guess what? They can contribute it to your ABLE account and it not count as income. So keep that in mind. Now, there are some limits, $20,000 per calendar year from all sources. So it's a new limit for this year. We used to be tied to what they call the gift tax exclusion, which is $19,000 this year. But they kind of retweaked our formula and kind of moved us away from that. And so we have our own formula, and that's $20,000 this year. And that potentially is going to go up each year. Now, the maximum that can be in the account before you can no longer put additional contributions in is 500,000, which is quite a bit, right? But if you can get there, that's awesome. Just once you hit that limit, you can no longer put any additional funds in. Other types of things that can roll over into the ABLE account, we get this question a lot, like, oh, can I roll this retirement plan over? Or I have, a Roth IRA or an IRA or some kind of other retirement fund. Can I put that in an ABLE account? So no, the only way you could do a direct rollover is from another ABLE program. So maybe you're moving into the state for the first time, you want to roll that fund over, you can do that. Or you can roll over 529 plans over to an ABLE account. So there's instances where maybe you have a family member that's no longer using their 529 plan, there's leftover dollars there. They can roll that over to an ABLE account, or maybe you saved in a 529 thinking they may go to college, and now that doesn't look like it's going to be possible. You can roll those over into an ABLE account. Now that does count towards the $20,000 limit, so keep that in mind. And also, it's important to note, I haven't said this yet, but an individual can only have one ABLE account nationwide. So keep that in mind in your planning, right? So if you move out of state, or if you have multiple parents or multiple people in your life that were like, oh, we want to open an ABLE account. Well, we'll open an ABLE account for them too. The beneficiary, that owner, can only have one ABLE account nationwide. So keep that in mind for planning purposes. As I mentioned, you can put leftover Social Security funds in here. Now, one thing to note is this account does not shelter income. So if you were working, maybe you are getting paid, and you're like, oh, I'm getting close to earning too much, I might jeopardize my SSI or Medicaid benefits. Guess what? You can deposit that directly into an ABLE account, but that's not going to shelter the income. ABLE only shelters resources, aka how much cash you have on hand. So keep that in mind. The other unique benefit about this account is something that they made permanent. It's called the Able to Work contribution limit. And so basically, when this passed, individuals who were working and not saving for retirement, they were like, well, it'd be great if we can contribute more into the ABLE account. And so they passed what they call the Able to Work provision that allows beneficiaries, owners of the ABLE account who are working and not saving through a work-sponsored retirement plan, to kind of treat their ABLE account as a retirement plan, and they can actually contribute above that annual contribution limit. For that amount this year is $15,650. That's based on the federal poverty limit of a single household income from the previous year. So that amount goes up each year too. But there's some other unique benefits, like a saver's tax credit potentially. If they're not earning a lot, they could take that credit to reduce their taxes. So talk to a financial or tax attorney or tax advisor to see if that could be something you could utilize. As I mentioned, this is a savings and investment tool. So, right, so you're putting money in, and where does it actually go? And so we do have basically 8 products that individuals can save or invest in. The simplest being an FDIC savings fund, right? So this is it's FDIC insured, so you get a small interest payment. And the feds keep talking about that rates going down, so keep that in mind. But that's an option, right? These are all, I would say all these are the same amount of liquidity. So when we talk about distributions from the account, regardless if you're in the FDIC savings fund or, all the international stock, to get the money out, it's the same kind of time period. So these are all technically investment options. The next, and probably the most popular options we have, about half of the funds we manage are in these pre-designed portfolios. So conservative, moderate, and growth. Basically, the more growth heavy you are, the more you're going to be invested in the U.S. stock market, U.S. stock option that we have. But you get to pick and choose. So maybe, if your goals are more long-term, you may look to invest the funds. Or you can kind of create your own portfolio. And we see a lot of families that maybe they have a little more investment knowledge and they want to invest the money. They have the flexibility to do that. So we have a money market account that's run by the state of Florida called Florida Prime that pays a little bit more typically than the FDIC option. There's a U.S. bond, U.S. stock fund option. Now, these are broad-based mutual fund products. And so it's not like you're invested all in one company. You're invested in a lot of different companies. And those are both managed by Vanguard. And then finally, our international stock option is a managed by BlackRock. But once again, that's a broad-based index fund type of product. And so the customized route you can kind of pick and choose. Anytime new money's coming into the account, you get to pick where you want it to go. We actually have an allocation model, so you can go and say, all right, I want all new money coming in. Maybe I want 50% in the FDIC and 50% in the growth portfolio. So if you get checks mailed in or somebody makes a gift, it's going to be allocated that way. Any new money that's coming in, you can always reallocate where it goes. However, once money is in the account, it can only move around to these different investment options twice per calendar year. That's a federal law. So keep that in mind, right? So if you're thinking, oh, the market's good, the market's bad, or maybe I want to invest, and then you're like, no, maybe I want to save. You could do that with new money coming in, but be mindful that if it's in the account, it can only be moved around twice per calendar year. All right. Now it's time for my favorite thing. I'm the spender, right? So I'm the spender in the family. That's why I'm not allowed to go to Costco by myself anymore. But basically, we want to utilize the funds, right? Because ABLE is an acronym. And if you're in the disability field, we love our acronyms, right? Achieving a better life experience, right? And so to do that, you need to utilize the funds in the account. And that's really what the goal is to allow people to save and invest, but to ultimately use it to help them have that better life experience. And so there's a couple ways to get money out of the account. The most common method is via ACH to a connected bank account. So basically, during the enrollment process, when you put that $25 in, we use Plaid to kind of connect your bank account to the ABLE account. You'll put money in through that bank account, and then when you take a withdrawal, you can take money out and put it back in that connected bank account. And you can have multiple bank accounts as long as they're tied to the beneficiary or the ALR, whoever's managing the account. It does take 2 to 3 business days. It could take longer depending on the time you do it, right? So close of business for us is 4 p.m. So if it's a transaction after 5 p.m., it's going to be 3 to 4 days. And then, holidays and whenever the market's closed. We also offer a reloadable prepaid card. It's through a company called TrueLink Financial. So it's a separate enrollment process for that card, but it does offer some unique benefits that you won't find with a regular debit card. First of all, it's reloadable, so you have to, load 500, 1,000, however much you want that individual to spend. You can limit where they can go and how much they can spend at certain vendors. So maybe they're like, okay, we don't want online shopping, and you turn that off. But there are some additional rules when it comes to that. But it is a Visa preloadable debit card, so you can use it anywhere Visa is accepted. Also, you may want checks, right? We don't offer a checkbook, but you can request a check to be sent online. It takes a little bit longer because it has to go through the mail. But you can look online, preview what the check looks like, send it to a third party or to yourself. You have that flexibility, and then if you need it sooner, you could ask for overnight shipping as well. There's a fee to that, but they'll fee for regular check request. And then the cool thing about this is when you make a distribution, part of that distribution hopefully will have earnings tied to it, and those earnings on that distribution are tax-free as long as you use it for a qualified disability expense. So you're probably like, well, what is a qualified disability expense? And we'll talk more about taxes at the end. But the cool thing about this account and what I love about it is what you can use it for. Very broad. Even the final regulations from the Treasury say it's to be construed broadly. So it can be any of these 13 kind of categories they provided. So let's just give some examples of here what this might include. So let's talk about health, right? So if you think of a health-related qualified disability expense, so something that is health-related that's going to help that individual have a better life experience. So it could be maybe a dental appointment, a copay, could be, maybe it's just bandages because they're always getting injured. I have a household of 3 boys, so that's something I would spend that money on. But maybe it's just a better life. Maybe it's like getting a massage. Maybe it's just a health vacation, right? To get away from everything and take some time for yourself. All that would be qualified. Maybe education, going back to school, continue learning, back to school shopping, or any of those resources you need to go back to school or receive education. Housing expenses, whether that be rent, mortgage, home modifications, any of that would be qualified. If we look at transportation, some of our biggest success stories have come in people saving for the first time and putting a down payment on their first vehicle. So we've seen that a lot. Some of our biggest success stories of getting a wheelchair accessible van for our family was awesome. Or maybe it's just ride sharing services. So we had one of the individuals I work with that has a visual impairment. They utilize their able account to pay for their Uber and Lyft to get around town without having to rely on public transportation. They can use their able account for that. Legal fees, so set up a special needs trust or maybe a small business. Assist technology and support, that could be anywhere from devices or wheelchair enhancements, and even post-death, which is kind of interesting, is that unfortunately we're all going to die one day, but you can utilize funds in this account to offset or pay for those funeral and burial costs. And then finally, the Treasury did say other, which kind of is very broad, right? But they didn't give any examples except for an individual utilizing a cell phone and having a cell phone plan as a qualified disability expense. So very broad, right? And this is probably one of the most questions we get is like, oh, is this a qualified expense or is that? It's really between you and the IRS. We always recommend keeping documentations on why those withdrawals are qualified. You don't have to submit that to us, but in case the IRS were to audit the owner of the able account, they would need to provide that documentation. So just keep that in mind. What's probably not qualified, giving a certain money, a bunch of money away would probably not be qualified. Anything illegal in nature, anything that's harmful. So it could be maybe tobacco or alcohol, just depending on the unique situation. But there really hasn't been any additional guidance from the IRS on what's qualified, what's not, except for, hey, it's to be construed broadly. It doesn't have to be for the sole benefit for, so it could be, it could benefit, other people could benefit. For example, if you got a modification to the home or had to move because this moving would put the child in a better situation, down payment for that home could be qualified. So very broad on what it means. And so finally, people ask, okay, John, this sounds too good to be true. How much is it going to cost, right? And the great thing is the way that we're structured, we are very fortunate to get an appropriation from the state to make this program free. And so right now at this time, it's still free to enroll, no monthly maintenance fees or any check request fee. Depending on if you invest the money, there could be some investment advisor fees up to 0.29% annualized. For example, if you had $10,000 in there, you'd pay about $29 annually on fees. Of course, you don't really see that fee because it comes out of the returns. And then finally, there are some optional fees. So if you want a paper statement, that's $20 annually, or a prepaid card costs $2.50, and that comes off the balance of that card. So that is in a nutshell how the program actually works. So enrollment, putting money in, taking money out. That is in a nutshell. As I mentioned, we are the state of Florida's ABLE program, but there are 46 other states, soon to be 47. Wisconsin has passed all the legislation to have an ABLE program. They just haven't funded it yet. So we think that's going to come on later this year, hopefully, in Washington, D.C. We're unique because we're only open to Florida's program, but there's some states that have nationwide enrollment. And really the differences are going to be fees and the investment lineup, and then who's managing the account. So that's the account in a nutshell, but I want to touch on public benefits because that's one of those key advantages that we have. And Dustin, we don't have any questions yet, do we? I don't think so. I didn't see
No, we
any.
don't have anything in the chat right now. No, sir.
Awesome. Yeah, wonderful. Well, just as a reminder, if you do have questions throughout, please throw them in the chat. That helps us navigate the questions you may have. But let's talk about public benefits because that's the other big advantage outside of tax-free earnings and not having to pay income tax on those earnings and not even have to report them as long as you're using it appropriately. The other really big advantage is that the money in this account doesn't impact eligibility for federally means tested programs. And we'll talk primarily on the biggest ones, but we'll touch on some of the other ones as well. But Medicaid is probably the biggest one, right? Medicaid, there's kind of two primary buckets of Medicaid, right? So Medicaid that helps offset medical costs for some individuals with limited income or resources or unique populations. So they could be, elderly, low income, It could be a child that's low income. So that's one type of medical cost. The one that you might be more familiar with is the home and community-based waivers that we have in the state of Florida, primarily the I-budget waiver or the long-term care. Both of those programs provide a little bit more robust services than typical healthcare. So that could be, maybe paying for a group home or adult day training or, job support, employment. So provide a lot more services than just typical healthcare. Well, to have one of those to be on the waiver, an individual can't have more than $2,000 in their name. The good thing is this ABLE account doesn't count towards that $2,000 limit. So they're allowed to maintain their eligibility for Medicaid. And the great thing is it doesn't matter if the money's in the ABLE account or if you take the money out of the ABLE account and sit on it, it's generally disregarded for Medicaid purposes. So there was concerns when this first passed that the state of Florida was going to recover these accounts if somebody was on Medicaid, and that's not the case. We passed legislation that says that, ABLE is not going to file, or the state's not going to file on an ABLE account to recoup their Medicaid cost. And typically what happens if an individual does pass, they can still utilize the ABLE account or their personal rep or whoever's managing the account to pay those outstanding costs, including funeral and burial. If there's still leftover funds, somebody would need to open up an estate. And then at that time, if they're over 55, Medicaid could file a claim on their estate. All right. So, keep that in mind. If you have an account, if you're serving people that are 55 and over that have Medicaid, you really want to be able to utilize this account. I used to have this saying that ABLE stands for achieving a better life experience. It doesn't stand for asset building, leave it to your estate, right? So that's not what ABLE stands for. You want to utilize it. And so I always encourage individuals to, what's the plan for this account? How are you going to use it? So one of the questions we get a lot is like, hey, can I go on Disney? I think there's an ARC that annually takes individuals down to the big annual conference that the ARC has in Disney, and they're utilizing funds out of their ABLE account to offset some of those costs so they can go to Disney and have a good time. So it's a unique way to use that. So Yvette, we're going to come back to your question. Yvette's asking about ABLE accounts and special needs trusts, so we'll tackle that in a later section here. The other big federally means tested program we see about a third of the people we serve that are on is SSI, so Supplemental Security Income. Now, SSI is a cash benefit to help offset housing needs. It's this year, I think it's $994. And so part of our requirements is we submit all documentation on ABLE accounts to the Social Security Administration monthly. So they're going to know if somebody has an ABLE account and is on SSI. They do just have some additional rules to consider. I encourage people to Google or look for the Social Security POMS, Program Operations Manual System, if they have ABLE and are on SSI, because there is, like I mentioned, we're going to cover a couple of those rules, but there's a robust set of how Social Security is supposed to look at ABLE accounts. The two big ones I want to talk about, the rules that they kind of and considerations to have if you're on SSI and have an ABLE account is first the balance. As I mentioned, these accounts can go up to $500,000 before you can no longer contribute to them. However, if somebody is on SSI, if they have anything over $100,000 in the ABLE account, that will count as a resource for SSI purposes. So keep that in mind. If you really rely on that monthly check, then keep your balance below 100,000. If not, you can let this grow. What's supposed to happen if your ABLE account is causing you to be over-resourced for SSI purposes, what they're supposed to do is suspend your SSI but keep your Medicaid eligibility. We've had some issues with that, so keep that in mind. But that's what their rules say. The other additional rule is paying for housing expenses out of the ABLE account, which is totally allowable. However, for SSI purposes, if you're retaining the funds for housing past the end of the month, then that's going to count as a resource. So for example, we're towards the end of January, and let's say, hey, I knew maybe my rent payment is due on the 3rd of February. It's $1,000. If I take out of $1,000 out of my ABLE account today, and I'm on SSI. So I take $1,000 out, I'm sitting on it. February rolls around, and then on the 3rd, I go ahead and pay my landlord. Well, Social Security is going to see that you took the $1,000 out of your able account, you sat on it, and it's a housing related expense. And so that $1,000 would count as a resource for February, which could put you over the $2,000 resource limit. So the loophole per se, or the way to get away around that, is just have the able account pay that housing related expense directly. And we see actually a lot of attorneys utilizing this when it comes to special needs trust, which we'll talk about. But they'll use the trust to fund the able account, have the able account pay those housing expenses directly so somebody can get their full SSI check. Uh, I'm not a Social Security expert, but typically what happens if an SSI recipient is having their housing needs paid by somebody else, then they could have their SSI check cut by a third. So, $300+ cut from their SSI check. But if they use the ABLE method, they could get that full SSI check. So just keep that in mind. Excuse me. And also, just as a reminder, if there's a rep payee that's managing their SSA funds and they want to deposit it into the ABLE account, they can do that. However, the rep payee should be the one managing the ABLE account. That's not an ABLE rule. That's a Social Security rule. There is some conflict because the IRS says, hey, it could be somebody else to do it. But Social Security likes to know if you're retaining or, conserving some of those Social Security funds, where it's at and what you're going to do with it. All right. As I mentioned, there's a bunch of other federally means tested programs that could be food, the SNAP benefits, food and nutrition services. They usually look at how much money you have. Guess what? ABLE doesn't count towards that resource limit. Same with subsidized housing through HUD, and even somebody applying for FAFSA. For a FAFSA application, ABLE accounts aren't going to touch it. So let's talk a little bit about these. And I'm going to stop sharing with us because I think I have a slide that talks a little bit about, I don't have it in this presentation. Oh, well. I was going to say, because usually I have a little presentation that talks about special needs trust, because that's usually a question we get a little bit. But I'll do these frequently asked questions, and then I'll talk a little bit about special needs trust since that question came up. We already talked about, if the beneficiary passes away, what that process looks like. All outstanding qualified disability expenses are paid first. So if they had, a credit card bill, if they had housing, funeral, burial, whatever that is, once all that's paid for, then somebody would have to open up an estate. So the ABLE could be notified on where we pay that money to that estate. And then it goes through whatever the estate process is. It could be probate, most likely, and that legal thing. So keep that in mind. Once again, I say, ideally, you want all the money to be expensed when that happens, right? Of course, we can't plan. Right? I know we're all going to die one day. We just don't know when. And so keep that in mind for planning purposes. Talked about taking the ABLE account out of state. Always check what your new state's ABLE program is. They may have some unique state tax benefits. And then finally, qualified disability expenses. As I mentioned, it's to be construed broadly. That's the little words that they use. But it's supposed to, ultimately help improve or maintain the beneficiary's health, independence, or quality of life. And when it comes into question is if the IRS were to ever audit that individual, they're going to say, hey, show me the documentation. And now it is tax season. And something I didn't mention is saying, okay, John, how do you report this to the IRS? What do we have to do? So every monthly we report to Social Security, but annually we report to the IRS. And what they do is they usually issue two forms. First form is being a 5498 QA. That's high level, a form that says, hey, I have an ABLE account. Here's why I'm eligible. Here was the balance when it was established. So everybody gets that for establishing an ABLE account. The other one is if you make a withdrawal from the ABLE account, you'll get issued a 1099 QA. And so that 1099 QA basically says, hey, this person took out, let's say, $1,000. So how much money was taken out of the account? Of that $1,000, how much of it was earnings? So maybe it did well and it's $100 in earnings. and you just need to keep $1,000 worth of receipts or documentation on what that $1,000 was used for, to help, why it's a qualified disability expense. You don't have to report that $100. You don't have to pay income taxes on it as long as you use it for qualified disability expenses. If for some reason you didn't have enough qualified disability expenses, then you have to pay taxes on the earning portion plus a 10% penalty. But remember, it's back on whoever the owner is, so their income bracket and that 10% penalty. So, if their income bracket's low, then it's very minimal damages for even utilizing this account inappropriately. So just talk to a tax or financial professional, because I'm not an expert. I'm just John, your state employee here, up in Tallahassee. And then high level about special needs trust. So Yvette, good question. And we'll go ahead and open up, Dustin, to any other Q&A, or if people want to come on mute or on camera or whatever works for you. But high level, Yvette said, hey, does the ABLE savings account similar to a special needs trust with a trustee? So yeah, there is some similarities when it comes to ABLE accounts and special needs trust. And what I'm going to try to do real quick is seeing if I can pull a slide quick. Excuse me, I had a sneeze there. And look, and I did find it. So I'll do this is a little sneak preview. See, look, your audience is getting a special treat here, Dustin. I just want
This
to
is
let you
extra.
know.
We
No,
didn't pay for this. Where
they
this is
didn't pay for this. Yeah, this is 100% free. But I'll talk a little bit. This is a presentation I did to the Santa Rosa Escambia Bar Association a couple weeks ago. And so they asked about special needs trust. And so once again, I'm not an attorney. I just hang around with a lot of attorneys. And so high level special needs trust, it has a couple different components. Settler grantor, that's the person that's establishing the trust. Trustee, so that's the person or the corporation, such as a bank, that's actually managing the trust. And so when you set up a special needs trust, it's going to go through all these, like who's establishing it, who's going to manage it, and then the beneficiary, who is this account benefiting, who's the trust benefiting. And then if it's a first party special needs trust, so somehow it belongs to that individual with a disability, it was their money first, then there's mandatory payback. And so high level, different kind of special needs trust, right? So these are typically first party, is if the money came directly to that individual with a disability. So maybe they got an unplanned inheritance, a personal injury award, they won the lottery. There's a lot of ways where people could come into money that wasn't planned for, and so you have to set up a special needs trust so they can keep their Medicaid and SSI benefits, because that's ideally what a trust is for, similar to ABLE, shelter money to keep benefits. Also, there's a way to do a qualified income trust to earn more and keep benefits. Now, for iBudget waiver, we didn't talk about, but there's some language that allows people to earn more and keep their Medicaid waiver funding. It's called Working People with Disabilities. I think Representative Tant and Branson, is it, that has some legislation out there that's trying to strengthen that language. So I think that might be on your legislative agenda. I don't know. And then finally, pool special needs trust, where you're working with a nonprofit to manage these funds, because it's not millions of dollars. Maybe it's a few $100,000 or 50, 60,000 more than what an ABLE account can have. You might look at a pool trust. Another one is a third party trust, right? So that's what somebody is planning. Like, hey, I have a third party trust. So if I die, my insurance policies get paid into it. My other assets get paid into it. So that way it doesn't go to that beneficiary directly. No Medicaid payback, lets them keep their benefits, a little more flexible, and it can be funded now or later. And so there's quite a bit differences, right? So ABLE, when you think of ABLE accounts, the beneficiary can establish the account if they want to, similar to a first party trust, but for a third party, it's established by somebody else. We have limits on what you can put into it. The other ones don't. Fees are completely different, where we're basically free and tax-free earnings. A trust doesn't have that. A little bit differences here and there. I want to thank Travis Fincham, who's now our board chair, but also has special needs lawyers. You might have heard from him. But high level, just a little bit different. So there are some nuanced differences, right? There's trustee involved. Is you're setting up through an attorney for a special needs trust, ranges in cost, part of the estate planning process potentially, but it can have all kinds of stuff in it, whether it be non-cash assets or future payment like life insurance policies that get paid into it. Able accounts are a little more flexible, but restricted on, it's got to be a cash contribution, but it could be first party and third party money. Uh, and it has some other protections against creditors. But that was that extra benefit stuff that you guys didn't ask for, but Miss Sanchez did. So
No, thank you. We appreciate you covering that. So yeah, if y'all want to, anybody, I think you have the ability to unmute yourself, and so you can go ahead and unmute and ask questions if you want to do it that way. You could do the little raise your hand emoji. You could also type your question in the chat. We have about 10 minutes for questions, and if we need to go longer, we definitely could. But um, don't hesitate to ask questions. Thank you so much. We had a nice turnout. There's like 80 people on the call, so we appreciate you all.
that's great. Everybody's shy. See, everybody is already an expert in Able and have an Able account, has an Able account. So,
Or
you
the
guys are
well, I
doing
think we
great.
have we have one right here. Well, I was gonna say that you're just really good at covering it, so everybody's good. Deborah does have a question. So, when someone in receiving services from from the APD waiver, such as ResHab or BX services, personal supports, etc., and they also have an ABLE account, if they pass, will the ABLE trust pay back the state for those services from the trust?
So good question, right? So an able account is not a trust, right? So we have different protections, different rules. So when it comes to the able account, no, there's not going to be a payback for their services. However, if you go through and you pay everything, and the individual unfortunately passes, and they have an able account, and you pay funeral and burial and everything out of the able account, and let's say there's $10,000 left, you're going to have to open up an estate. You put the $10,000 in the estate, and if they're over 55, Medicaid's going to recover their estate, right? Which could have the leftover proceeds of the ABLE account. So it's one of those things, it's just part of that planning. I always stress, ABLE really is a spending tool. The goal of it is to say, hey, yes, I'm sheltering resources to keep my public benefits, but ultimately, you need to utilize it to help that person and improve their health, independence, or quality of life. And that can be anywhere from going on a vacation, buying, better personal effects. We had one individual that during a hurricane had to move and had to refurnish their own house, and they used their ABLE account to do that, right? So, very, very creative ways you can utilize these funds. But really, that's the goal of it. So, is there a payback directly? No. Is there a payback potentially if it goes to their estate? Potentially. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you, John. Yvette asked, please clarify again who receives the remaining funds if the beneficiary passes with the ABLE account.
Yeah, so good question, man. It would go to their estate, right? So if they have a will, if potentially they have to go through probate. I saw an instance where the court ordered, hey, able account distribute $2,000 to this family member, $2,000 to this family member, $2,000 to this family member. So ideally, it's going to go through the court system for them to determine where it goes, uh, which could include it going back to the state if they're over 55. So, uh, you know, there is a way to add a successor designated beneficiary. Right now, that's limited to a sibling who also qualifies for ABLE. So just keep that in mind. There's a way to list somebody, but it's very limited at this point.
I guess like we had like three questions come in all at one time. That's pretty awesome. So like literally 12:52, a bunch of stuff. So Mary, I don't know if you covered this, but Mary said, who can be the beneficiary for the account, and do they get to keep the balance of funds after paying funeral expenses? I think you did cover that.
Yeah. So that goes back to, when there's leftover funds after everything's paid, what happens to it, right? Once again, if you tell us the beneficiaries passes, we're going to freeze the account to prevent any more contributions, but you could still take it out. You just have to justify that it's still being used to either pay into life expenses, outstanding bills, etc. If there's still a balance after all that's done. That's when you would go through the estate process, talking to an attorney to close this account, and then we usually will send it to whoever that attorney tells us to. So keep that in mind.
Okay. And then we had another question from Therese. She said, as her power of attorney and caregiver, I handle all my daughter's affairs and paperwork. When I fill out the application, do I sign as my daughter for who I'm speaking for, or do I sign as herself, as herself?
Yeah. So during the enrollment process, you're going to be filling it out with your information and her information, but you're going to be basically attesting and signing off saying, "Hey, my daughter, qualifies. She meets all the qualifications," but you'll be signing it on her behalf, basically. So the account will still be hers. She'll still be the owner of it. You're just going to be on as that authorized legal representative managing it, and so but you be the one signing off on her behalf.
Okay. And then Deborah said, just to be clear again, so after any funds are left after burial or any client outstanding bills, the remainder once in estate mode, so very likely the state will want the remaining 90K they have paid over the life of the client. That's what she said.
So right, so typically when an individual, if they're on Medicaid services, Medicaid is supposed to be tracking how much the state has paid for in services, and some of these, Medicaid plans could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? You know, the I-budget waiver, I think was average is 30 to 40 somewhere in there, right? So, if you've been on Medicaid services for 10, 15, 20 years and the state's paid $400,000-500,000, they want to try to recoup some of that so they can keep that Medicaid program alive. So there could be an instance, yeah, where if they're over 55, they open up an estate. Abel had $50,000 in it, got down to 20,000. We put that $20,000, and the state could say, "Hey, we're going to claim that back to kind of, recoup some of the costs that we've spent in that person's lifetime." It's a little bit uniquer than that. If you want to go one layer deeper, typically they can't recover more than when the ABLE account was established. For example, let's say you established an account today for ABLE, you put $20,000 in it today, the person passes tomorrow. Medicaid, if they wanted to file, they could only file for one day. So it's since the inception of the ABLE account, not since when they got on Medicaid. So keep that in mindful as well.
I don't know if this is just in like a mom or dad and then child situation. Would guess so, but can an able account holder's beneficiary be an adult child?
So as long as that person is a sibling who qualifies for ABLE, so in that situation, I don't think so. Now, there are some rules where if you listed somebody else, there may be some negative tax complications. Right now, when you take that money out, it's up to you to manage it. So once you say, "Hey, we're going to close the account because of a death, and we're sending this money," it gets a little more complex. So the main thing is you're attesting that, "Hey, I'm following what the tax rules are, and if I'm not, I'm paying whatever those negative consequences are."
Thank you very much. So John, Yvette also asked, who receives the remaining funds if the beneficiary passes with the third party SNT?
Yeah, so with the third party trust is different. So first party mandatory Medicaid payback. After that's been resolved, there may be, if there's any residual funds, it would go to whoever that beneficiary is. Third party is different. Third party, since you're planning it ahead of time, you're going to be able to list additional beneficiaries. So you could have, oh, this is for my brother Mark. He has a disability. Mark passes away. If Mark passes away, I want these funds to now go through, my other son, or maybe I want to benefit the ARC, or maybe I want to benefit somebody else. So you get the provisions in that third party special needs trust. Now, if it's through a pool trust, right? So a pool trust is pulling people's funds together. You have to look at what that rider is, what that language is, because they may say it's going back to that nonprofit so they can continue running this account. Some are saying, "Hey, we're going to take it back, but we're going to disperse it to other people in our pool trust." But typically it's going to somebody else. It's not going to the state.
All right, thank you so much, John. I think let's see, we might have one more. So if you have an able account, use it or lose it. The able account doesn't really need a beneficiary question mark.
So it doesn't really need a beneficiary, but no, it's the goal of this account is to use it, right? So it's I wouldn't say use it or lose it because I've seen situations where the fund does get distributed to family members. Medicaid doesn't file a claim on their estate, or estate never gets open. So I mean, that's the goal of this account, right? Is to help people improve their health independence or quality of life. So I tell people, yeah, this is a great tool and mechanism to shelter it, but what is the end goal? Well, what do you want to have them annually go on a vacation? Do you want them to be more independent in their own apartment and utilizing their able account to offset that cost? Or, whatever that future may look like, how does able take part of that plan? So that's really the goal of the account.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. And then state again how much how much can exist monthly, yearly without well, I saw
Yeah.
the limit was what 20,000 per year, right?
Yeah, twenty
Calendar
thousand
year.
per calendar year you could put into it, and then max account balance is a hundred
5,000.
thousand for SSI, or if you're not worried about SSI, 500,000. From there, it can continue to grow tax free. You just can't put any more money in it.
So there's no monthly limit, just the yearly calendar
No,
limit.
no, no. Yeah, we have some people that $25 today, and then maybe the summer comes, they might put another $100 here and there. Some people like to do systematic contributions, where every month, fifth of every month, I'm going to put in $100. You can do that. So it's a lot of flexibility. So there's no mandatory minimum, systematic contributions or distributions from the account. So it has that flexibility as well.
Okay. And then Deborah added that you
Oh
say
yeah,
SSI, but some clients just have Social Security. Are the
yep.
rules the same?
No, no. So SSI, remember there's two types of Social Security has two kind of big programs, right? Title II and Title 16. Uh, Title 16, the SSI benefit, right? That is a different pot of money. You have to meet certain requirements, and that's why they have those extra rules. Now, Social Security or Social Security disability insurance, that's an earned benefit, right? Either that beneficiary has been working and they built up enough credits, or maybe they have a parent who's retired and now they're getting Social Security disability benefits based on their parent's retirement. Those rules are there's no rules for those. It's kind of like uh, almost like the Medicaid rules. So there's no payback or anything. And there's no issue with that. So since that's an earned benefit, none of the SSI rules apply. Good
Okay.
questions.
Yeah, there were a lot of great questions. Well, thank you all so much. We appreciate you again spending your lunch hour with us. We will send out the link to the recorded meeting so you can go back and watch this. And we will also send out resources from the meeting as well. Um, and I mean, yeah, we had another question um,
Yeah, they
from
asked about the SSDI again, and no,
yeah,
no.
you already covered that, right? So
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, again, we will send out resources from the meeting, and we will provide certificates of attendance. They're not technically CEUs; they're just certificates of attendance. But I know some people can use them for some of their hours or whatever. So again, we appreciate you all. We definitely appreciate John. Thank you so much for taking the time to present a lot of great information. And it is, I mean, it's just all it is a resource to help our clients and our population. So we're grateful for that. We're grateful that ABLE exists and that this resource is out there. So thank you for taking the time to explain it to us. I mean, having that the website looks great and it looks user friendly. Being able to
Yep.
open an account right there and do everything online these days is the way to go. I know that again having the paper option is great, but these days doing everything online, being able to have that access, it looks awesome. So it's very very awesome to have you all out there and. We appreciate you and keep working hard, brother.
All right. You too,
Keep fighting
Dustin.
the
I
good
appreciate.
fight.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep. I appreciate you guys as well, and hopefully you guys have a wonderful legislative session and good times. But I appreciate the opportunity to talk about able accounts.
of course. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you all on the next call.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.